Hey, Cara.
Hey, Dean.
Okay, Cara, so here's my question. Um, as a fractional CMO, you're talking to a lot of companies, you're working with companies. Tell me, like, in the first 90 days when you sort of get in there, tell me, like, the worst marketing issues you've ever seen or the best setup you've ever seen.
Yeah, well, it really runs the gamut of
Uh huh.
things. I work with a wide variety of clients across industries, B2B, B2C, and I'm an optimist. I'm a very positive person, so I don't necessarily think worst, but I do have some imperatives, and I think situations that are set up for success that I've identified as I've gotten into some of these roles are a willingness to invest in marketing, but also a willingness to invest in the brand because I view my role as a fractional CMO as a temporary resource. I need to
Mm-hmm.
come in, I need to analyze the situation, I need to look at, marketing foundations, put a plan together,
You don't get a
and
year to hang around and observe.
and then make myself obsolete,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of, I think, definitions and ways of working out there for fractional executive roles, but I view it as a temporary resource. I don't view it as a part-time resource who could stay on for, a longer period of time. I very much view myself as a foundation builder. And so in order to be able to do that, there has to be a willingness to invest, a willingness to be open to new ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and with that, I look at a couple of solid critical pieces of the marketing foundation, and kind of piece number one is the brand narrative and the brand strategy. And so
Right.
having a willingness to invest in that is going to set up the partnership for success. Without that, there may be some challenges that come up later on down the road as I'm making those recommendations in terms of where the company needs to invest in order to see that success from the marketing plan.
All right. So let's imagine that it's day one on a brand new engagement with a brand new client. And this is your first sort of official sit down with the CEO. I mean, you may have talked to the CEO before because there's been a selling process to get you there. This is the first official meeting, right? You're in
Yes.
now. CEO looks at you and says, "Hey, so Cara, you've worked with a lot more CEOs than I'm ever going to have to deal with CMOs. So, as CEO, is there something I should start doing to make sure that you're successful? Or is there something I should stop doing because it would stop you from being successful?"
Yes. Clearly articulate the business vision and clearly articulate the business objectives, right?
To you.
Because to me, and that can be a dialogue, that can
Mhm.
be, hey, we're looking at 2025 and we have kind of a range of scenarios or a range of revenue targets, having that very transparent conversation, and could help if the CFO is in that conversation too, having a very transparent conversation around where the business needs to go in the next 12 months and what is the long-term vision as well, right? Because the marketing plan, the marketing strategy and resulting plan needs to be built to serve the business's objectives. And a lot of the work that I want to do, kind of those initial examinations as I'm starting to look under the hood and look at performance against objectives and start to build the foundations of that go forward marketing strategy, it really needs to be built to serve where the business needs to go in the short term and the long term. But there's a lot of kind of trickle down implications of that. Building a marketing budget, it's one of the first things that I take a look at. If there's an existing marketing budget, great. If not, and we're building from scratch, I'm very much looking at how do I build a budget, a resource model that is going to serve what the business needs to do from a performance aspect. And so that level
Right.
of transparency and really jumping into that conversation from the outset is helpful. And again, that could be a dialogue, that could be a give and take, that may be we need to put something on paper so that we have a starting point, and then we need to approach this quarter by quarter. But that level of transparency is critical to success from the outset.
Okay. I have a fill in the blank question. I have a couple fill in the blank questions, but
Okay, great.
I like these because there's not much work for me, and you end up having to do most of the work, or any other guest. So your answers can be as long as it needs to be. Just finish this thought. Many clients just don't understand.
I'm going to say the brand narrative piece.
Yeah.
And, to me, brand is one of the critical foundations of the marketing plan. Brand, obviously, we start with an understanding of who our target customer is, and then we really kind of dig deep into what it is that we stand for, what it is that we represent, what makes us unique in the marketplace. How do we define that, right? And, brands, Sometimes, there isn't maybe a willingness to invest in it because there isn't an understanding of what is this thing, right? Some companies think brand is just a visual identity, right? Or that
Mhm.
it's a one and done exercise, right? We worked
Right.
with an agency a couple years ago and they gave us this deck and we
Yeah.
have mission, vision, values, and a brand identity, and we're
We have
great. We're
colors, we have a
solid.
logo, we're good to
That's
go.
right. Yes, we're good. And don't get me wrong, that's great work. That's a critical foundational piece to start from. But then, there needs to be that kind of willingness and understanding that we need to dig a little bit deeper, right? We need to make sure that there is a story underlining this. When we use the word narrative, it's a story that's underlining us. That's how we create human connection with our prospects, with our customers. And so really understanding that. And I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of, CEOs and founders that really get that. They understand
Right.
that. They say, I have a great product or service. I want to be able to communicate that. I want to be able to articulate that. We have all these unique things in our, DNA and our corporate culture that we want to make sure are coming to the fold. Right. And that to me, you understand your audience, you build the narrative. So you're building a story that's going to connect with that audience. That is, that starts to build the flywheel for what we do on the marketing
Yeah.
side, right? Because
So
we take,
then,
go ahead.
uh, well, in that case, I just want to follow up on that then.
Of course.
So the companies that you talk to that don't yet understand the value of like the story, the brand, the
Yeah.
narrative, like what do they end up struggling with?
Well, all the messaging might be very functional, right?
Hmm.
Let's say you kind of look at their website and you start poking around, you start to look at the customer journey and everything's very functional, right? It's we have this product or we have this service and here's the key benefits, here's what it does for you. And that's important, right?
Hmm.
That has to be clearly articulated. Folks need to know what they're getting, what they're paying for when they, become customers of your business. But to take it to the next level, right? Because you can do that for a period of time and you can make sure that your, value proposition is clear and your features and benefits are clear. But over time, there's going to be other things that come, other pressures that come into the equation, more competitors, in the marketplace,
Right.
customers, there's fragmentation or they get distracted or they use your product and they liked it a lot, but there wasn't really an emotional resonance. So then you're seeing you might have, loyalty and retention issues on the back end. And so that's really
Mm.
where it's, it's time to kind of go a little bit deeper, right? Figure out what it is that is truly unique, right? Maybe your unique selling proposition that you determined a couple of years ago is no longer unique because things have changed in the competitive marketplace. So it's now time to, take another look and make sure that we're really surfacing a story, a kernel of something that is really truly going to allow you to create those emotional pathways with your customers, because ultimately, that's going to be measured by customer lifetime value. That's going to be measured
Right.
by, the value of the relationship that you're able to build over time by doing that work from the outset.
Okay, so here's a new scenario. You're on stage, you're the speaker, you're talking to 250 people. Every one of them became a fractional CMO yesterday. So this is our first week.
Yes.
Okay, fill in the blank. The thing you guys just starting out as fractional CMOs are going to be most shocked by is
How quickly you need to make an impact.
mm,
Because I think that's the nature of, to me, that's the nature of the fractional CMO opportunity. As a corporate marketer for many years, I worked in a lot of large organizations. I had a lot of role changes. And in some cases, it took me several months, right, to get up to speed, to get my arms around the organization, to earn trust with stakeholders. And you don't have that gift
no,
of time in a fractional role. You really have to come in and earn that trust, demonstrate that confidence that you know what you're doing, that you have the right level of expertise and experience to be able to come in and make an impact. But, in addition to that, you do have to, be able to analyze quickly, draw conclusions quickly. The first 90 days, you have to be able to demonstrate, okay, great, I've gotten my arms around this. I've spoken to, employees, stakeholders, customers. I have looked at, performance against your objectives. I've started to really dig into what's going on the marketing side of things, and I have a plan. I see what the opportunity is. I have a plan. And then I think you need to be able to take that plan and quickly shift that to how do we actually make this come to life? Right. And so it's one thing to build the strategic roadmap, build the framework. That's really important. Setting a new vision for the marketing organization in that company. But then also, in some cases, having the hard conversations about how do we get here? And, as a fractional CMO, I view myself as that, temporary leader to come in and either build marketing foundations or get marketing foundations back on track. And in a lot of cases, that may be making a justification for the CEO to hire additional full-time marketing resources, or kind of look at their agency resourcing model, or think about how we're going to, carry this plan forward. And you have to be able to do that in a pretty quick clip, to be able to make that lasting impact, and really help, propel that company's growth forward in a very short period of time.
Okay, so you're talking to prospective clients all the time. And the thing about marketing is virtually everyone thinks they understand most of marketing, or at least all the main concepts of marketing, no matter who you're talking to, right? As people talk to you about tools or platforms or ideas or concepts or fundamentals of marketing or whatever, what do people talk about and you think it's overrated, and
Hmm.
what do you think is underrated or underappreciated that more companies should pay attention to?
Yes. Well, I mean, we're certainly in the space now where everybody's talking about AI and
Mhm.
it's integrated into every tool that you could possibly use, and you're just bombarded
Yeah,
with it as a feature. And sometimes there's not even clarity in terms of what that means. And, that's great, right? We should all be looking for opportunities in our MarTech stack to make sure that we're, incorporating the latest and greatest. But it's also important not to get, distracted by the shiny objects without really looking at the foundations of the customer journey. And by customer journey, I mean, what are the key touch points that your
yeah,
prospects and your customers are going to have? What are those interactions that they're going to have with your brand along the pathways of, awareness and discovery, consideration, education, conversion, loyalty and retention and advocacy, et cetera. Your customers are going to be moving along this journey based on what you build, but also what they discover out there organically, around their brand, around your brand, and conclusions that they come to. And I'm a big proponent of simplicity in the customer journey. Get it right. And again, talking about brand foundations, you have to make sure that your brand value shows up to that customer in each stage of the journey, right? You're fulfilling your brand value, your brand purpose in
right.
each stage of the journey. And so to look at it, from a lens of simplicity, I think is really important, right? Are we kind of nailing all of these different avenues in which our customers are interacting with us? And tools are important to that. You need tools to, of course, host your website, generate leads, have, email, post-purchase nurture flows, et cetera. You need
Right.
tools to be able to do that. But you don't want that to be so overcomplicated that now we are throwing all the spaghetti at the wall and we're not sure what sticks, right? So I think it's really great to layer on tools, because it's going to allow you to innovate, right? Test and learn and optimize. It's going to allow you to do a lot of things, but really make sure that foundationally you understand, the steps in the customer journey that you're architecting, and it's seamless and it makes sense to your customers, and, tools and feature sets that you have add value in different areas, of that journey. And so I think it's really great to, go back to basics in some cases. In some cases, I'm looking at a customer journey that's incredibly complex, and we don't even know what actions customers are taking or why, or what's, adding value in different areas. And sometimes it does make sense to take a step back and really say, what are the core actions that we want customers to take, or core ways we want them to interact with our brand, and let's make sure we're doing that right. And let's
Right.
get some foundational learnings on how we're doing that, what we're saying, the channels and tools that we're using, so that we can optimize going forward.
Um, do you have a lesson you'd want to pass along for fractional CMOs about getting clients?
Great question. I've been, very fortunate to make a lot of phenomenal connections through my network.
Hmm.
Networking is absolutely worth your while. You never know, what connection you're
Right.
going to make, or who has heard of you, or who has passed your name along and created a great connection. So that was a lesson that I learned. I transitioned from a corporate marketer to a consultant, and then, really started to kind of dig into the fractional CMO space, and took some patience to start, right? I in my corporate marketing world, I didn't do a lot of networking. I worked for these, big companies, big brands. I
Yeah.
was kind of heads down on what it was that I was doing. I didn't have to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I wasn't, trying to be a thought leader or putting out content by any means on there. And this is a very different world for me to be in, where I do want, I have a point of view, I want to share it. So I,
Right.
do take the time to write and put things out on LinkedIn. But, I also just very much value the human connection piece of it. I very much enjoy having networking conversations with other marketers, other, consultants, agencies, really just, hearing about what's going on the marketing side of things and making sure I understand what it is that potential clients need and are looking for and kind of what's the dialogue in the space. So take the time to do that. Take the time to talk to other fractional CMOs. I have been really, pleasantly surprised by how open people are, sharing learnings, sharing wins, sharing challenges, and just being very transparent about that and wanting to have a community of folks that are, in these seats and learning from one another. It's not a competitive atmosphere by any nature. You should never view it that way. It's really just great to be able to learn from each other. And I think a lot of, fractional CMOs have a particular niche or a particular industry that they like working in, or certainly a set of, skills and experiences that lend themselves to clients of different sizes or maturity levels or
Right.
industries, et cetera. And so, I am often finding that there's, great referrals and dialogues that are happening from folks that work in a particular niche, or they identify an opportunity and that's not the right opportunity for them, but they're looking for a great, resource to plug in and still be a value add to that, prospect to be able to suggest a good resource. So have as many conversations as you can. Obviously, you have to balance that, with your time, but have as many conversations as you can just to, because you never know what's
Yeah.
going to create a great opportunity.
Yeah. I tell people as much as possible, either get into a cadence or automate the very first couple of steps of prospecting and
Mm-hmm.
outreach, because somehow there's always something more important to do right now, or more urgent or more interesting
Yes.
than reaching out to prospects.
Yes.
Funny how that works.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to
Okay.
keep yourself
Yeah.
honest with staying
Yeah.
on top of that
If you don't
aspect
like
of the
the
business.
rejection or like being ignored, just try to automate like the first little bit, so that at least you're talking to people who are slightly more likely to
Mm-hmm.
want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
In that case, as these fractional CMOs are like talking to prospective clients or looking at prospective opportunities, um, we'll get into the green flags in a second. But what are some of the red flags as a fractional CMO where you say either this is not for me, or this is not really for any fractional CMO? What are some of the red flags a prospect might throw up?
I definitely think that client that you're speaking to or the prospect that you're speaking
Mm-hmm.
to, there needs to be a willingness to invest in marketing. And that can be difficult. That's sometimes not a comfortable conversation to have around, what's your budget or, kind of how
Yeah.
much are you willing to spend? Um, and by invest, obviously, if you're having that conversation, there probably is a willingness to invest in the fractional CMO, but that one resource is not going to be the be all end
No.
all of being able to really,
And
implement a marketing strategy, right? If you're only looking to hire one person or one resource, maybe you're looking for more of an advisor or a consultant, someone to kind of bounce some ideas off of. But to me, a fractional CMO is a leader and is a builder, is somebody who, either if you have an existing marketing team, can come in and be a leader of those
sure.
individuals and really, set them on the right path and grow them and develop them and make sure that they're carrying out the strategy that is being built. Or you're looking for a leader to come in and identify the right resources, help build up the marketing function. So there needs to be a willingness to invest. And so um, if you're in a circumstance and you can ask about, what is the vision for the marketing org team going forward, there should be a plan, to say, hey, it may be I'm looking for you, fractional CMO, to identify that for me because I don't know who should be my first hire. I don't know how to go about this. That's okay, right? But
Right.
there needs to be the willingness to invest in that. Otherwise, anything that you build is just going to fall flat, or you may find yourself in a circumstance where they're looking to you to implement everything, and I don't think that's the best value for the prospect either, right?
Right.
A fractional CMO, it's a leader. If they're looking for a contract marketing manager, that may be a different circumstance, right? And you have to kind of identify, is there that willingness to really want to build those marketing foundations and invest in them for the long term.
So what are some of the green flags? Or let's put it this way: you're friends with another fractional CMO. You guys have lunch once a month. You're at the table and you say, I just think I've just found the perfect client.
Yes. A couple things. One, I actually love circumstances where there is a marketing team in place.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I miss that about my corporate life,
Yeah.
working with a team, mentoring a team, growing a team. I really enjoyed that aspect of what I did as a corporate marketer. And so to me, that's a green flag in circumstances where I can come in as a fractional leader and work with an in-house team. It could be a very high functioning in-house team. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios in which you may need a leader. Maybe you are going through a business transformation and you need a leader who has experience, going through that, an acquisition, an org change, who knows, you may need a leader to help guide the team
Right.
through that. Or maybe the strategy is changing or the kind of growth stage of your business is changing. And you just want to make sure you have that kind of continuity of leadership to guide the team through that. But I love when there's a team in place. That's a green flag to me because A, I like working with those individuals
Mm-hmm.
and B, it's really fun to come in and examine what the team has been doing. And, you have folks that have been close to it and have ownership of it. And you can really kind of work alongside them to understand where have you seen successes? Where have you seen challenges? How do I help kind of guide you through? How do I help clear these obstacles? Or in some cases, it is establishing that team's role within the organization, right? And sometimes that's helping a high functioning team of marketers have a seat at the table, have a seat at the business planning table, right? And kind of drive more of that, alignment at the top for the marketing org. So those are situations that I love where it's like, oh, awesome. I get to work with a team. I get to mentor and manage a team. And I get to, help raise their profile within the organization, kind of set the tone for strategy going forward. And I know that they're going to be able to action on it. Those are the best circumstances for me.
I'm going to ask you a weird question now
Yeah.
because I'm going to ask you to ask a question.
Okay.
If you were going to ask a question to a prospect out in the world, and I mean
Mm,
literally, go ahead and ask it because who
yeah.
knows who's going to see this clip and then actually like reply to you.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what would you ask a prospective client, or what would you like to know from companies that are just now starting to think about maybe I should get a fractional CMO?
Mm. I like to know what they think of marketing. What is their perception? And that's okay if we have different perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's going to be a fun conversation, fun dialogue that we can have about what is marketing's role? What do you view as marketing's role in the organization? And certainly, to me, I think marketing has, utmost importance in the business planning conversation, right? If we think about marketing and in terms of what it represents, you know, brand narrative, product strategy, pricing strategy, audience
Right.
targeting strategy. So many of those things are, so closely linked with the overarching business strategy. But sometimes that is not the perception of what marketing can do. Sometimes marketing is seen as a purely, executional tactical arm, right? Or a very reactive center.
Right.
Sometimes it's, strategy is coming from, over here, some other place in the business, or it's sales led as an example. And that is just a question on like marketing, we need this, marketing, we need this, or this happened, we need to react to that. So I always like to, really just ask, what is your perception of marketing, or what do you think marketing's role in
Right.
the organization should be? And that doesn't mean that's a red flag for me if we're not on the same page in terms of that answer. Sometimes that's a great opportunity for me to talk about, my perspective, my experiences, where I've seen, marketing function really well, where I haven't, and start to talk about what the opportunity is going forward. That can be a fun alignment challenge and opportunity as well. But I think it's a great thing to ask, understand what the view
Right.
is and what you are being viewed as, or what you are being asked to come in and do. And you may have to do a little bit of course correction on that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. There, on this podcast, we don't have like gotcha questions. I'm not trying to trip anyone up.
Yeah.
Every season, or every like approximately 50 fractional CMOs, we like alter the questions and try like new sets and iterate through.
Yeah.
This is the only one that's ever stumped anyone.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give you a heads up.
Okay.
What is marketing?
It's a big question. And
think that's why it stumps people.
It is, right? And,
So I'm a founder of a SaaS startup. I'm a tech guy. I've never done anything on marketing. The
yeah,
company's never done anything on marketing. I lucked into an enormous investment from a VC fund right from the beginning.
yeah,
And so I'm like seriously, like, what is marketing? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, a way in which that I have illustrated it
Mhm.
for others in the past is, marketing is not brands. I do believe brand strategy, that is its own practice, right? And marketing absolutely needs to be involved in that conversation as a key stakeholder in that conversation. But what I think marketing actually is the pathway, between your brand and the customer. You've defined your ethos, what it is that you represent, what makes you unique in the competitive landscape, what exactly it is that you bring to your prospective consumers. That's the brand, right? Your story, your reason for being. Then you have your consumers over here. And marketing to me is the bridge. It's the pathway between those two things, right? Marketing, sometimes people think of marketing and they think of the channels, and that's a component
Right.
of it, right? I think of marketing, I think of email marketing, I think of social media marketing. Okay, those are the channels, those are the pathways. But marketing as a whole is how I bring all those things together and how I architect the customer journey, right? How customers will discover my brand narrative and be interested in it and learn about it and interact with it and ultimately, hopefully, be driven to a purchase decision with that. And so there's a lot of components in there. So it's not just the channel plan,
Right.
it could also be how we
Right.
think about our pricing strategy, how we think about our distribution model. Often in many of my marketing roles, I'm involved in conversations on, are we going direct to consumer or third party retail? What's kind of the B2B aspect of our business versus the B2C? Marketing is wrapped up in all of that, right? How do we build that bridge? There's many ways to build that bridge through different channels, through different distribution models, through different pricing strategies, through
Right.
different comms approaches, right? And so, while marketing is not the brand, we have to figure out how to articulate the brand, right? How to articulate that through the different channels and touch points in the journey. So I like to communicate it in those terms, right? There's a lot of things that are going to go into the foundation of that bridge, and that's going to be different for every company. But we need to figure out how to build that pathway to connect your brand, your story, the story that you want to tell, to the folks that you want to tell it to, in the simplest of terms. But again, there's a lot wrapped up into there. It looks different in a lot of different organizations. There's so many different facets of marketing, types of
True.
marketing roles, areas of ownership, that it's hard to define exactly what that is. But I think, you gotta build the better bridge, or look at the bridge and optimize the bridge and figure out, how we build a better
Right.
foundation going forward.
All right. And finally, who should be contacting you or reaching out to you these days,
Yeah,
and
that's a
how
great
would you like them
question.
to?
I have a website, Cara.
That is
Yes, of
every guest's
course. Well, you
favorite
can find me
question.
at my website, caraverholtconsulting.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I love working in a variety of different industries. I have, my corporate experience spans tech, entertainment, sports, working on the B2B, B2C side. So I am industry agnostic. I like working with clients in all industries. Frankly, one of the most exciting things for me is stepping into a new industry and figuring out how my, experience, expertise can apply to that new industry. Because I think there's a lot of,
Right.
marketing foundational elements that are the same, irregardless of industry that you're working in. But if you are a client that is really, passionate about your brand, you're passionate about your products and services, you want to figure out how to really articulate that story. How do I make sure that customers are really hearing that story? Then I think we could have an exciting opportunity to work together and really figure out how we make sure that that story is reaching your intended audience. I've been pleasantly surprised by a lot of the opportunities I've had to be able to really kind of refine that storytelling and really give a good hard look at the customer journey and say, how do we do this in a bigger, better way? So I certainly hope to hear from some folks with those opportunities.
And do you
I
focus
don't.
on
No,
specific industries?
I'm agnostic.
Okay.
I'm working.
So you solve you. It's basically which problem they have, not
That's
what
right.
industry
That's
they're
right.
having the
And
problem with.
I will say,
Okay.
I've in some cases found a little bit of a sweet spot for companies that they're maybe going through a bit of a transition. They're not, brand new. They're not, nascent organizations. They're going through a bit of a transition. Maybe they're reaching
Right.
kind of the next generation of consumers, or, they really need to take a good hard look at their customer journey, or, they've grown a lot. They've grown, successfully by having a great product and distribution engine, and now want to take a little bit of a step back and say, are we doing things right? Do we have an opportunity to kind of optimize and retool? And so, industry agnostic, but I think at a level of maturity, at a level of scope, where there is, willingness to invest in marketing, and certainly a good kind of historical basis of performance to really dig into, and take a good hard look at and say, how do we do this for the next, 3 to 5 years of marketing innovation?
All right. Cara, this was fantastic. I had a lot of fun on this. People
Thank
have
you.
literally been silent on that.
It's a hard
I
one.
felt bad for asking it. Now I don't. Oh, well, I feel less bad.
Yeah, I'm sure you get some fun, interesting answers too.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. And thanks, Cara. And see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dean. Appreciate it.